Who wants a pot of coffee? I just make coffee. Hey, I'll have a cup. You want a cup of coffee? Sure, there you go. Who wants coffee? Anybody else want coffee? Who wants coffee?
And now it's time for the man with the caffeine, the new tropics for the brain. It's Coffee with Mike. Hang in, hang tight, grab your cup, and let's get this thing started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Java Chat. We got Coffee with Mike here, and today we get to talk about nutrition, something that a lot of entrepreneurs, business professionals, just people in general, honestly, just seem to throw out the window and forget, in citing whatever reasons, time, culture, what have you. But bottom line is that nutrition is definitely something that's very important, and I wanted to bring somebody on who is well-versed in that realm, so much so that he's actually created a system around it. So I would like to welcome to Java Chat, Mr. Joel Green. Thanks for joining us today, bro.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Hey, so let's jump right into this. You created. I'm going to read this, well, and of course, we got to do it this way. It says here, Joel is the creator of the VEEP Nutrition System, VEEP, the world's first commercially available program based on targeting gut communities to affect. Oh, good. We have stuff to talk about. Gut communities to affect health and body composition. Yeah, let's not look at mines, please. His system has been used by some of the nation's largest employers, including major cities and hospitals. He's been featured on Dr. Phil show storylines. He's also featured author, speaker, and consultant for nutrition companies. So this guy consults the guys that consult us. Top tier publications and major podcasts. Well, and some of the minor ones. We're so glad you're here. Beginning with the first article on the gut biome revolution to the health and fitness community, written in 2007, he has amassed the largest known body of outcomes targeting the gut biome. He's the author of The Immunity Code, New Paradigm for Real Health and Radical Anti-Aging. Of course, we'll have that link in the description for those of you that want to grab that book, because we're probably going to talk about it a little bit. Joel's devoted over 50 years to the pursuit of health, nutrition, and anti-aging. We just found out that we have some mutual friends in that community. He was training intervals in the 1970s. Geez, dude, really?
Yeah.
You were doing HIIT training back in the 70s? Holy crap. Taking MCTs in the late 80s. Yeah. Man, the first MCTs were horrible. Keto in the, I did that too. Keto in the early 90s, which I'm just kind of getting savvy to personally, and targeting AMPK by 2009. You are not 55. That's bullshit, dude. I call bullshit on that one. You do not look 55. You are 55. Not. Are you seriously 55? Jesus. He's 100% natural athlete. Yeah, gotta be if you look like that. Uses no ergogenic aids while working out on average once per week and eating whatever. Okay, that's it. We talk. That's it. Out. Enough. I don't need to say anymore. The hell, dude? 55. No ergonomics, which a lot of my friends, because of our powerlifting days, are already using stuff like that by the time they were in their 30s. I've done bodybuilding and powerlifting. I don't need any ergonomics, but then again, I'm not going nuts like I used to. What's the story, man? How'd you come up with all of this? I mean, where's this all come from?
A lot of it was necessity. I was actually kind of a fitness junkie my whole life, and
who hasn't been? I mean, really?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then right about 2003 through 2006, I wound up running this company, and I was working 15 hours a day, and we were, your typical startup story, just growing really fast, revenue shooting through the roof, nothing but problems, got to figure everything out as you go. And I got fat. And the reason I got fat was because all the stuff that I had kind of, learned how to do didn't work when you took away time. Just didn't work. So I really needed a way to make things work with zero time. And that turned out to be the problem that everybody has. Everybody, like if you're not paid to be fit, then the problem you're up against is that you're going to find very real, very serious constraints on your time from time to time, meaning travel, social eating, pressure, family, just all kinds of things. And so the prescription I discovered for taking care of the body doesn't really work that great outside of the ecosystem of just being fit as a way of making a living. And if you're in the ecosystem of business, then it kind of falls apart. What happens, the average person will, kind of read a book or start a program, and they'll kind of get this sort of thing put upon them of, hey, you have to make time.
Yeah.
And so they try and make time, and they do for a while, but then eventually what happens is other things compete for resources of time, because that's not how you make your living. Time goes to zero. And then when it goes to zero, all the weight comes back, typically, all the issues come back. And so everything I did was really about finding something that could work in real life and work for real people, because I was one of those. And so I was not a guy who got paid to be fit. And no disrespect to anybody who is paid to be fit.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No disrespect to anybody that gets to sit in the gym all damn day, which is my favorite place. But no bad feelings towards them because they get to sit down and look pretty all day and get paid to do it. No, not mad at them at all. But for the rest of us normal people,
you get paid to look awesome. Good for you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, great. And your nutrition knowledge is basically zero. That's not true. There's a lot of guys out there that really do know their stuff. There's I used to actually
be one of really great food.
Yeah, I actually used to be one of those guys that got paid to look good. The only thing was I got paid to talk about looking good more than actually looking good. I was one of the guys that I was a personal trainer nutritionist for a while. Nowhere near what you're doing, but I mean, I did that. And I was able to maintain a decent physique, being a mesoendo, for those of you that know those terms. I had a hard time looking, really good, so to speak. I don't get the natural six packs. I don't get the natural. I mean, I'm a block. So my body style is just not one that looks like a super V, or, I'm not one of those guys that you see in the model pictures. Today, it's not. It's a lot worse today than it ever has been. But when you're talking about people like us, we're entrepreneurs. Is what we do. Yeah, business professionals, people that are out there working. I don't care if that's frontline, from custodial engineers all the way up to the CEO. Our time is our biggest challenge. You created a system that somehow gets around this. So how does that work? What is this system that you've created?
Well, I had to write a book to kind of describe the whole thing. And kind of the long and the short of it is that we have to kind of rethink a lot of things. We have to rethink just about everything. We have to, first of all, you have to get completely real about what really happens over time. Completely real, because until you do that, you're never going to solve anything. And so, getting real about what happens over time is very difficult, because you have to kind of really inventory not just sort of the illusory aspects of, I got in shape, that solved everything. I have this whole section in my book talking about how getting in shape doesn't solve anything, doesn't solve the problem. Like, you can get in shape, big deal. I've been in shape lots of times, like really good shape. Doesn't solve anything. Solves nothing. It doesn't solve the long-term problems of the body. So the long-term problems of the body that we're up against really are problems related to aging and decline. And when we begin to unpack aging and decline and go, well, mechanistically, what's going on here? What you begin to see is that everything touches on the immune system, everything. And in fact, aging is essentially, you can liken aging to the body is treating aging as if it's one giant injury that it's trying to heal from. And it goes into overdrive. And so you get this overexpression of immune mechanism. And rethinking sort of the aging process, when we look at it that way, we see, wow, immune mechanisms are at the center of this. And so we have to account for all that, particularly with body fat. But the other thing is we have to just inventory what really happens. What really happens over time is this. You see a kind of a sine wave, but it progresses upward. It goes like that. Okay. And so what these lower valleys are the periods where you get in shape. But then what you see are these peaks where you get out of shape and get back in, you get out, get back in, get out.
That's the roller coaster.
But the really interesting thing is the roller coaster, despite the peaks and the valleys, is actually tilted upward. It's doing this. And what I routinely see with people that I deal with as they get into their 40s and 50s is they could get in shape really well when they were young. They, everything worked, and then as they get older, they can't lose fat. They can't diet. They can't get in shape, and there's reasons why this is true.
Mm-hmm.
So once we start with that premise, like getting in shape is not solving anything, and we begin to unpack why.
Mm-hmm.
It'll take you down a rabbit hole that won't end. It will not end, and you'll just keep going further and further down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
What you're going to discover is that the act of shrinking fat cells itself sets the body up for weight gain. So we've been trained to think, oh, if I just shrink my fat cells, I solve everything, yay! But the reality actually is no. It's like a row of dominoes that you just tripped, and what you're doing is you're setting this in motion
mm-hmm.
for very complex reasons. And then the other thing we have to get very real about is periods of zero time. And
yeah,
there'd be like a really good reality show if you were to take like a bunch of people who just love to work out and love to be fit, and then put them in a house and give them like really like demanding gigs. They got to do 15 hours a day of something other than working out.
Yeah.
And they're not allowed to work out, not allowed to do anything. And then ask, well, what's the solution? Because that's the reality most people face for varying periods, not all the time, but varying periods of time. People will have these realities where they'll just tell you, I just don't have time, and it's real. It's very real. And the thing is like, well, just make time. Let me really try it. It doesn't work. It didn't work for me, and I spent my whole life trying to be fit. So you need a solution that works when time goes to zero. That's right. A big part of the problem.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned put everybody in a certain place and kind of close them off from the working out and quote unquote being fit. We're going through that right now in quite a few places in this country where people don't know what to do with themselves and they're stuck at home.
Right, yeah.
And we have this, I have numerous friends that are professionals and even people that are, because it's not just entrepreneurs, it's the whole spectrum of professions. They're at home and they're like, I gained 10 pounds over this last lockdown. And I'm like, okay, which caused me to go jump on the scale and go, well, damn it. So did I. And it's because, again, the not going anywhere. I do try to get out at least once or twice a day, even though it's 110 degrees outside. Doesn't matter. If there's a breeze, yeah, it's a convection oven, but I'll go out for a little bit. Mm-hmm. To get up and do something has to be. I mean, if you otherwise you're sitting, I sit at this computer all day, working, mm-hmm. doing things, coming up with creatives, talking to people, blah, blah, blah. Before there was, I got up in the morning, went to the gym, but can't even really go to our gym right now. They want you wearing a mask in the gym. And I'm thinking, how am I supposed to breathe? I do HIIT training. I do Tabata training. I wear a mask. I'm going down. Mm-hmm. I've already seen what it's like for me, just walking around with a mask without working out. I can tell that I'm losing oxygen because I get tired mm-hmm. quick. Mm-hmm. Being 48. So we're looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, so we have this time challenge. If it's not, and I've heard this one too, abs are made in the kitchen. It's an old statement. We all know that one. And it has to do with diet. And there's this whole thing around gut health, which I'm fairly sure some of your book goes into. But this is a whole thing that people have never really paid attention to, is that I've heard all kinds of stuff, like the fact that digestion is actually an external function rather than an internal function. And that kind of blew my mind. That, gut health matters because if your gut's healthy, the rest of your body can be healthy. And I'm sure you have friends that are physicians that are in this realm that will attest to this. I don't know all of the studies, but maybe you can touch on a little bit of that and start explaining, why is this stuff important? What is it that this helps with immune-centric health, et cetera, et cetera?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, the first couple things. First thing to understand is that a lot of behavioral things that you think are your choices really aren't. Like when it comes to cravings, really the rule of thumb is that your cravings are not even yours. You're just craving whatever the dominant species in your gut is actually craving in order to thrive and survive. So you see this reality where people they'll try and eat really tight during the day and they get home and they explode and just go eat a bunch of carbs and they're just craving sweets and stuff. Well, that's just that the dominant species in your gut is craving those things, and it's bedtime, and they want you to feed them, and they get you to do it. And so cravings are very, very steerable.
Those little dominant little turkeys. They no.
Yeah, and they actually make you think it's you. So then you lay all this guilt on yourself. I can't so much.
We got him. He's feeding us carbs. Here it comes, the spaghetti.
He did it again.
He did it. We got it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. But the reality is that cravings are super steerable. You can steer them very easily just by changing up the substrate or the source you're giving the gut. But the really important thing to kind of understand is that you've heard this saying like immunity begins in the gut. Well, actually, immunity itself began in the gut. The body's entire immune system started in the gut.
Okay.
And so, particularly with this COVID thing, the gut is far more involved in susceptibility to things like COVID-19 and just immunity in general than we really far more than we previously understood. So, if you want, what you're seeing a lot of right now is like immunity is sort of like this ancillary ornament on a Christmas tree. Like, oh, you just add this one, vitamin D and vitamin A, you're good. But the reality is that immunity actually is the center of all the body's functions. And so if you want real immunity and real protection from things, then you have to literally start in the gut, because everything else is going to fan out from there. And there's super good, super technical reasons why that's true. But suffice to say that the health of the gut, maybe an easy way to think of it is this: immunity has a whole lot to do with membranes. It has a whole lot to do with linings that protect and separate you from the outside world. And every day you take in the outside world and you put it inside your body, but it never becomes part of you. It's actually still the outside world. Mm-hmm. And that's a tricky thing to think about. And your gut, the job of the gut is to kind of pick and choose what parts of the outside world to let in. And I use the analogy in my book, like if you were to take a piece of skin and just cut off a 2-inch patch and put some salami on that, you'd have a problem really fast.
Yeah, I would agree.
And yeah, the gut's very similar. So when the lining in the gut gets worn down and you eat salami, you have a similar problem. It's very, very, very serious, very fast. So keeping the linings that protect the body from the outside world working the way they should is super important.
So so we're talking about gut lining, and that, guys, just when talking about gut, we're not just talking about stomach. Okay, we're talking about all the way through to the bottom. There are, because I've read some stuff around this too. I believe they're lectins, I think, are what they're called, that cause micro tears in the lining of the stomach and in intestines and things of that nature. And they can literally open up a big enough tear that toxins can get in. And that's just probably one aspect. You're talking about nutrition. I'm talking about toxins at this point. I'm sure there's 2 more rabbit holes we can run down. But when we're talking about gut health, how do you, or what kinds of things do you take into consideration that you should be looking at when it comes to what you're going to take from the outside world and give to your body to see if it'll take it? I mean, is there a process? Is there a theory or some kind of protocol that you can begin looking at? Okay, my gut's screwed up, I get it, what do I do to fix it?
I'm so glad you asked.
We now have the real subject matter.
Oh yeah, you and I would have too much fun just hanging out.
Trust me, then. You're welcome back anytime. We can talk about this all day.
Oh my gosh, I'd be going into Dark Sidious a lot. Once more we see the real results here.
I love my book.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna nerd up way too much. Yeah. So a concept here, a really important concept. In fact, I spent like 2 chapters writing about this. Is that we are in an era that we're going to look back on in the future, and we're going to look back on it and see that we kind of thought we had things figured out, and we were just doing some really dumb stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this leads to a single concept. It's the most important concept you will ever get about the body, and it's one word, and the word is balance. And it's when you study how every major system in the body works, what you're going to see is one thing rises above all others, and that's that balance is health and imbalance is disease.
Yeah.
So you cannot describe any disease without using the word imbalance. You cannot. It's impossible. Like, can't say, well, you've got an imbalance and these cells that are dividing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you have an imbalance of fluid. You know, the word imbalance is going to fuck up. So now the irony of that is that we are in an era that is seeking to obtain health through imbalanced inputs into the body.
Yeah.
So that's what this whole era is all about. Like, plants are bad. You should eat all meat. Balanced meat. Meat's good. Or no, meat's bad. Meat's very bad. Imbalanced plants, and that's the solution. Yeah? Or imbalanced fats. Take in an imbalance of fats, and that's going to solve everything. So it brings up a really interesting question, which is, if imbalances in the body are disease, will sustained imbalances in the diet produce health long-term or produce disease long-term?
Yeah.
And that's a game-changing question, because the answer, I'll tell you, is it will produce disease. It doesn't even matter. Healthy inputs imbalanced over long periods will produce disease in the body. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. So and you can prove it with water. Like, water is super healthy. You need water. It's healthy. You drink water. If you imbalance water, you're going to die. Okay. And you can go down the list and make a case. So where it concerns the gut, the really interesting, fascinating thing to understand is that in this era, we seek our truths through story and narrative. Like, well, what should we eat? And it's a story. It's like, well, 1 billion years ago, our ancestors ate just meat. You know, you hear this?
Way too often, dude.
If you get away from story, then you go, well, okay, that's nice, but let's look at the mechanism. It's kind of like, that's nice, but let's see how the engine of the car actually works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you begin to dissect mechanistically what happens and then work backwards, here's what you get. The upper part of the gut, meaning the intestines, really needs animal products to sustain it. Okay, and I'll get into that in a second. And the lower part of the gut, which is the colon, really needs plants to be optimal. And so the upper gut really needs animal products. The lower gut really needs plants in order to be optimal. They need both. They need a balance of both, a balance of both in the diet. And here's why. So the lower part of the gut, which is the colon, a lot of digestion is done in the colon. The primary fuel for the cells that line the colon are what is a source we call butyrate. And those cells are called colonocytes. And butyrate is really best fermented by plants. And so you'll eat plant sources, and then the bacteria in your gut are going to sort of ferment this compound called butyrate. And then butyrate gives you, immunity against protection against things like cancer, and it lets those cells work optimally, and it's what they need. And it's also what they need to keep the lining of the gut intact. But when you look at the upper part of the gut, very interesting, what you see is that the enterocytes, or the cells that line the intestines, they optimally need aminos to function correctly. So their primary fuel source is glutamine. That's what they prefer for energy. And when you look at, like, well, where can we get glutamine? Like, your best and most readily available sources of glutamine are going to be, animal products. Like, there's 2 to 3 to 4 times the amount of glutamine in a steak that you would find in most other plant products. So it's much easier to get. And you hear this in the carnivore community. You'll hear this thing like, well, meat heals, bro. It heals, meat heals. And it's very true. It's actually very true, because
it's just the way that they say it a lot of times. I think a lot of people just, they discount, the populace looks at it and goes, oh, that's too one-sided, or the sound of it just doesn't sound right. I'm just like, yeah, that doesn't mean that it's not correct. It just means you don't like the way they said it.
It's bro science,
Yeah.
No way, bro. Meat heals, bro.
Bro science. I love bro science. I got to remember that. It's bro, it's the way.
Yeah.
I just rolled my eyes in the back of my head for that one. But it's true. We have this need for both. It's kind of funny when I see people going, just like you said, they go to one side and they've completely missed the other side, and I don't care which side you're on, whether it's the vegan, the vegetable side, or the meat side, it's always been about balance and being
Mhm.
able to make sure that the whole works together. You can't
Mhm.
treat one wonderfully and mistreat or not treat the other with what it needs. At least this is what I've learned from my friends that are all into the gut health kind of thing. You got to take care of the whole thing, or like you said, the
Mhm.
imbalance will create disease. And speaking to your point, the more that whole statement, imbalance is disease. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. pH balance,
Mhm.
water deficiency, nutrition deficiency, all of them. They all attribute to some kind of disease or some kind of sickness that you end up getting eventually because you're out of balance. When they
Mhm.
say overload on vitamin C, well, you can overload on vitamin C. It's
Mhm.
the whole too much of a
Mhm.
good thing isn't good.
Mhm.
When you get back to that whole story about balance and having at least something, maybe it's not red meat. There was the whole thing going around. What was it? Early 2000s, and late 90s, blood type diets. And I looked at
Right.
that and I was like, um, okay. And I have some friends that something worked for them because they were told they weren't able to eat chicken. It was toxic to them. And they eat more vegetables now. But and fish is the protein for the meat, I guess. But it's like they almost went completely vegan. Lost a lot of weight, but I look at them, I'm like, you don't look normal to me. I mean,
Mhm. Yeah.
am I missing something there, or just
No.
something doesn't seem
No.
right?
And again, no. Not again. If you're vegan, I mean, no disrespect. I understand the reasons for that.
I understand too. I'm not
But
against it. I'm just saying it's like,
yeah,
where's the balance?
exactly. Yeah, and it's very true that there's a power that I have personally witnessed. I've seen this myself, so no one can convince me this isn't true because I've seen it happen. There's a power to a wide range of super healthy food that is unique and can't be found in any other idea about food. And I have seen things that go beyond what drugs can do. Like I've seen a woman who was 322 pounds on 22 meds with no exercise in 3 months go off all meds with perfectly normal blood work just from a wide range of super healthy foods, so like pomegranate, salmon, steel-cut oats, like lean grass-fed meats, asparagus, raspberries, blackberries. When you take foods that have an inherent function, and then you get a wide range of those, there's a healing power that is found nowhere else, and it is unique to that. So, to the idea that balance is health, you can add to that idea that balance in the diet from super healthy food sources will long-term produce the most profound states of health that you can experience. Not to say that, and here's the problem. What you see is, I call this sort of time mapping.
Mm.
We've gotten into this thing of thinking that, you do something, you get a result, and then, well, it must be permanent because I got a result. But
Right.
that's not how most things work. Most things in the body, the way they work is you'll get a spike up front, and then long term you'll get this. And then very often the long term actually dips into the negative. It
Yeah.
goes under the line. And that's true of almost anything about true drugs. Like you go on like, caffeine. It's amazing in the beginning, and then long term there's just problems. Or SSRI reuptake inhibitors. They worked at first, they were great, and long term there's problems. Well, that same thing is true of dietary protocol. So you can go on a specific diet, like a keto diet or a carnivore diet, and you'll see amazing results up front, absolutely. But what you're going to see long term is that the effect in the long term most often opposes the benefits in the short term, and that's very true.
Yeah.
I've seen that. I've done this a very long time, and I can say that's 100% true.
Yeah. It goes back to the whole, just keeps going back to balance. I mean, if you're gonna, keto is
Yeah.
just like really restricting your body from using a certain nutrient. And if you do it over a long period of time, in fact, I think I saw something come out recently saying that keto is just not a sustainable lifestyle. It's not something that you can do forever, because you're essentially blocking your body from getting certain things it's going to need eventually. Um,
Yeah, I wrote. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, just kind of going back to the gut thing. I believe in your book you write about, so one of the first things, in fact, I think you write in your book, to restore the gut lining. There's a term in there called akkermansia. Is that correctly said?
Akkermansia and mucinopha, yeah.
Okay. And you go into, and this is interesting to me because I've always, everything with fruits and vegetables, the skin is where the nutrition is at, and you dive in with apples, which is my mom's favorite, and not exactly a non-favorite for me. I actually like apples too. What's the story with the skin? Why
Mom
is that?
was right.
Yeah, mom's definitely
Again.
right. Unfortunately, I have to go to the store every twice a week for another bag. It's her snack. It's what she snacks on. It's all good.
Yeah.
But what's the story with skins? How does that help? What's the story there?
Well, in specific to my book, if you ask the question, how did the gut begin? How did things get kicked off? What happened? What were the sequence of events that happened?
Mm-hmm.
Two things are going to come up. One is breast milk. Mm-hmm. And the components in breast milk, particularly a very special class of sugars called human milk oligosaccharides. Okay. And these are we'll get into these. They're very, very specific sugars and have very unique effects in the gut, particularly on immunity. Mm-hmm. And the other is substrate, which is just another word for food to feed bacteria. And when we look at the gut, and we go, well, there's lots of bacteria in the gut, but are there any that really seem to correlate with being lean, with health and long life? And is this kind of consistent across all groups of people? There's two bacteria that stand out. One is bifidobacteria and all of the subspecies of that, and then there's mm-hmm. another one called Akkermansia and mucinopha. And all lean, long-lived, and healthy people have these two bacteria. Mm-hmm. And when you look at, what does Akkermansia and mucinopha do? Well, it's the primary bacteria that maintains the gut lining. And that it's common to all lean people, and it's kind of got some superpowers. One of the things mm-hmm. that it can do is that when you see people that can eat anything and never gain weight, they probably have a bunch of Akkermansia in their gut, because what it does is it contracts the surface area of the gut, and so you actually absorb fewer calories. You mean the people that we hate because they can eat whatever? Those yes. people? Okay. Mm-hmm. So exactly. Those people. Yes. Those people. We can just basically take their stomachs and just leave them dead. Okay. We can replicate their stomachs, and then we can be hated ourselves. Exactly. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great age to be hated, by the way. That's yeah. Never going to solve anything with hate, but regardless of that. That's true. So, yeah. So when you look at what feeds this bacteria? How can we feed this sucker? Well, it turns out the skins of apples have a couple of very, very, very unique things going on in them. One of them is they have a very specific type of phenol called a highly polymerized procyanidin. And it's a phenol. It's kind of like, we think of phenols as colored pigments. And phenols can do a lot of amazing things. We find them in green tea, we find them in fruit, we find them, well, what these quote unquote highly polymerized procyanidins are is they're just super giant. They're on the atomic scale, which is measured in Daltons, where most phenols are 100, 200 Daltons long. These are 30,000 Daltons in size. Oh. So they're very big, and because they're so big, they don't absorb very well. Actually, they really don't absorb at all. Uh-huh. And so it turns out that when these giant sort of phenol molecules get into a very particular part of the gut called the cecum, they basically park kind of in there, and they ferment. And because they ferment and they sit and ferment and ferment, they make 8 times the Akkermansia of any other known food. So that's why apple peels are kind of like a starter kit for the gut, because it's a way to restore and replete Akkermansia. Most of us have worn down gut lining issues as we get older from sugar and everything. So Akkermansia is half the equation. Right. It's a third of the equation. The other half is human milk oligosaccharides. And there's one I talk about in my book. It's called 2-fucosylactose. And 2-fucosylactose, you find it in baby formula, uh-huh. and it does some amazing things. It's part of a group of molecules called HBGAs, which are histoblood group antigens, and they act as decoys. So what happens is when these things get in the infant gut, viruses and different types of bacteria need to bind to receptors in the gut, and these very long chain human milk oligosaccharides act as decoys, and they bind to things like human novavirus or H. pylori, and so they actually help immunity to get established in the gut. The other thing they do is, you mentioned lectins, and lectins are actually not all bad. Lectins are actually very good in a lot of cases. One example is with immunity in the gut and getting immunity established, there's a class of lectins called selectins, and what selectins do is they help things like secretory IgA, and they help other like sort of immune factors bind to the lining of the gut wall. And without that, what happens is that the sort of immune-centric molecules that we need will just tumble down the gut wall, and they won't adhere. So very, very important to the establishment of immunity in the gut. Hey, Michael, take a little break for a second. I think go ahead and say something. I think my earphones went out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, hang on.
So I'm going to put it on pause for a second. And we're back, guys. Took a short little break. Technology was not agreeing with us for some reason, and we seem to have beaten it back into submission. So we're going to get back into this. Yeah, right. We were discussing say it again. Akkermansia? Okay, Akkermansia,
mucinopha,
yeah, and why they're important and how they affect the gut lining, and guys, we're talking about gut health here, and being in balance and making sure that you're taking in the right kinds of foods so that the whole gets fed the way it's supposed to be fed. I mean, we were talking about red apple skins, and then I think you, in your book, you also get into red phenols and HMO, and you're going to have to explain that one by what it is, what's the actual, because I know it's a long term, but why those combined actually matter. If you want to jump in on that and dig in a little bit, go for it.
Yeah, sure. So again, just coming back to the question, like, well, how did immunity actually begin in the gut? How did it get started? And it got started through breast milk. And one of the key components in breast milk are these long chain sugars. They're actually called glycans, which is proteins bound to sugar. Yeah. And whenever you look at immunity in the body, what you're going to find are glycans. So sugar proteins are foundational, essential to immunity. And the gut has the gut uses these glycans for a number of different things, but you find them usually in membrane linings. And so there's this one particular
wait, our membrane linings or the membrane of foods that we take in? Ours.
No, the membrane linings of our gut. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Well, really, any membrane lining in the body, whether it's wherever you find membranes, you're going to find glycans. Over 40% of the proteins in our body are actually glycans bound up in sugar.
Got it.
So what you see is that in the gut, these long chain milk sugars, particularly one called 2-fucosal lactose, have just this incredible effect on immunity in the gut, and it helps immunity to get kick-started in the gut. And you really need these long chain sugars. They act essentially as viral decoys, and they do a lot of other things in the gut that are essential. They help to maintain the gut junctions, so they help the gut to close up. And then the phenols in apple skins actually do some similar things. They actually work on these proteins in the gut junctions called claudins, and they kind of command them to shut. So together, what you see is that if you're not coming from like IBS or colitis or some really serious kind of gut inflammatory issue, this is a really great way to kind of kickstart the gut. And what you'll hear anecdotally from people who do it is that you go through like a little bit of nausea the first day or two, and then you feel mind-boggling. And the reason you feel nausea is it's very similar to what happens when a fever breaks. When you begin to spin up one type of bacteria in the gut, the competing bacteria starve out, they die, their gut breaks open, and it spills what's called lipopolysaccharide into the gut, and that penetrates the gut lining, makes you feel kind of nauseated.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on the first day or two. But then after that, the bacteria that are replacing those bacteria all make B vitamins. And so literally you're kind of like, you feel like a kid again, your energy's through the roof. And it's very, very common to hear this. So that's kind of the gist of that protocol and why it's so effective. Now, if you have existing issues like, kind of inflammatory gut issues, then you need to start with amino acids. And you need to start with different combinations of aminos like glutamine and arginine in the gut, so that those help the gut sort of heal up and repair. And
what kind of like what kind of because they come in different forms. Some are liquid, some are capsulated. But what's been the most? What would you suggest would be a good format to begin introducing that to your gut if you have those kinds of? Because I have, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that will be listening to this that do, that have inflammatory issues of that sort. I have a few friends that have IBS, and it's like I feel bad for them, and I have no idea. Yeah, it's like I don't even know where to begin. And their doctors don't have anything but drugs, and I'm just like, not helping. But what would you suggest?
Jello.
Jello. Yeah, we are gonna have a good time. Come back to Vegas. I'll show you a Jello.
Yeah, no, Jello is a great place to start. Jello is loaded in glycine, and so I like to use the no-calorie Jello. I think it's like 5 calories, and what it does is it glycine has a number of effects, not just on the gut, but also on fat loss. If you're really lean and you have Jello at night and you wake up, you'll see the difference. Like one of my buddies is the guy that founded Quest Nutrition, Ron Penna, and he was asking me about Jello, and he was like, hey, this glycine thing, and because he took it and he woke up and his gut was sucked in. And it's really great for fat loss, but it's really great for healing the gut. So if you have gut issues, what you'll notice is it's very soothing and your poop gets really smooth, and constipation issues are much less. And so Jello and glycine is
you'll need to send me the brand that you prefer. I'll have to try that, and for numerous reasons. But yeah, that sounds awesome. I mean,
I use Jello.
Just Jello? Jello?
Yeah, like junk food Jello. Yeah.
Oh, that's right, because they have the what is it, the sugar-free or the whatever version?
Yeah, they have the no-calorie. So like they have them in these little 4-packs. Like,
yeah,
I'm a part of the whole thing of making stuff work in the real world is money.
Yeah, no kidding.
You can't turn this into a rich man's sport.
No.
Like you have to come up with ways to do this that are inexpensive. And so I use a lot of like cheap hacks, like a lot of things you can get at Walmart, a lot of things that you can get off the shelf, like Jello, and they work fantastic.
And this is the stuff that people, and because the industry in and of itself is a multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar industry, they have a tendency to really try to put it out of reach. I mean, look at some of the supplement companies. For only $49.99 a month, you can have this one thing that will absolutely help you. And I look at that and I go,
yeah. I'm a junkie.
A higher pile of shit I've not seen in a long time, but boy, I see him every other week. Let me tell you.
Right. Yeah. I'm a junkie for that one thing. My cupboard's filled with 30 of those one things. The next great
Yours
one
too,
thing
huh?
comes along, I'm like, this is gonna be the one.
Here's a silver bullet. No, there's only one silver bullet, and that's a beer. And I don't even drink that. That stuff's nasty.
When I go to Vegas, I want to come to your stand-up routine.
I don't do stand-up. I'm a sitcom. See, I sit. But I do have a ride that you're going to really enjoy. I think over half of, I'm glad you said that, over half of the supplements that are meant to help you lose weight very often focus on just one thing, and people fail to read the label. Yeah, because they're so focused on that one thing that's going to get rid of brown adipose fat, or that one thing that's going to change your, it goes right back to that whole balance concept. And if you're going to do something, like, again, we're talking about, don't just eat red apples. I mean, make sure you're getting other things in there too. Don't just eat gelatin. You got to get other things in there too. when you're looking at, by the way, I'm assuming some of these things that you suggest when you're talking about the finding the right deals with things that are in everyday life, this is something they can find on your website, right?
It's in my book. A lot of it.
It's in the book. Even better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
and again,
Particularly
guys,
for business guys, it's really important for business guys. Like an aspect of what I do that no one believes until like we hang out, and it's really true, is that I don't do any meal prep, and I do everything on the go, usually mostly healthy fast food.
You just became my bestest friend.
Yeah, no one believes that, but it really is true. And actually, it's a level up from that. You can actually eat much healthier on the run, and because it's not just there's a number of factors that impinge upon your health overall, and one of them is timing and sequencing and the way foods are sequenced, and a whole bunch of other things that I had to write a book about.
You're gonna love this story then, and if they catch it, which they may not, but when I worked for a certain company, a gym that has a couple of numbers in its name, not saying it because I don't work for them anymore, but when I did, one of the stories that they were most proud of was the fact that a busy mom that had to run kids to school, go home and get all the work done, still have, I believe was also working, super mom, 3-4 kids, had to pick up at school, 2 of her own, I believe, and 2 others. She had no time for meal prep. There was just no time.
Yep.
Had gotten overweight and really needed to do something. And this particular company had suggested a dieting plan that included a certain battered chicken product. I'm not going to promote them either, from a very well-known fast food chain that has a clown for its mascot. And this woman lost weight. Not only did she lose weight, she actually was able to still get in shape. She was doing other workouts at home, whenever she could figure out what she was doing. But just from the diet alone, including that battered chicken piece in her diet, when she would run after school to go pick up food for the kids, she would get that for herself and not use the sauces and not order soda. But speaking to what you just said, I've done it too, dude. I mean, I'll go through a drive-through and I will only pick the stuff that is what I understand to be healthier. So I'm not grabbing the double cheeseburger. I'm more grabbing the fish or the chicken products, and if I can get it grilled or something of that nature, and it's quick. I don't have the time to be prepping all the time, and I work from home.
Well, it's essential in the real world. It's in my book I talk about. I'm not a big fan of lifestyle. I think lifestyle is just it's an illusion. We're all living in a lifestyle. It's a meta lifestyle.
It's all an illusion. It's not what you pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Right? Yeah. It's what is the Matrix, right?
Full of shit anyway. Just don't pay attention to it.
Well, we all live in a lifestyle. It's the lifestyle that gives us cars and refrigerators. And, prepackaged food, and you don't have to expend a lot of energy to live. That's the lifestyle we live in. So anything else is just a subset of that. But it's much more important to pick up skills and a real skill that's really valuable, that can radically transform your life, is learning how to get supremely healthy and lean on the go without meal prep. That's a skill. And I'm not talking like junk food. I'm talking like healthy foods, but on the go and in the right timing and the right sequence. Like in my book, there's a hack where there's a thing in my book called the 2-day pattern, and I live in it. It's just it's a pattern where we amplify all the signals that keep you young. We just amplify those signals.
Okay.
And one of the hacks to it is, on the second day of it, you do the whole thing out of Starbucks, just on the go. So it's
really?
It's not just, and it's super healthy. So it's
I'm definitely grabbing this book now. Shit. No, I'm serious, dude, because that's you gotta understand something. There's a lot of, well, you understand this. I'm just saying this for the listeners and viewers. You gotta understand something. We live in such a high, fast-paced, quote unquote, lifestyle when it comes to work, even just work. I mean, to be able to trigger the signals just on a 2-day
Mhm.
cycle without having to freak out about, I didn't have time to make that. I didn't have time to eat that. You know, I think a lot of people get so subscribed to the protocols, they forget that it's a process, that it's not something that's going to happen first time or second time around. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but it's a process that you have to keep executing in order to keep the body recognizing that, oh, so this is what we're trying to do. Oh, maybe we should pay attention to next time around. Maybe we should react better next time around. And the body just does it anyway. It's not like our brain's doing it. Our brain's just taking note of it. The body itself is going, yeah, this is what's happening. Am I on the right path with that?
Yeah, very much. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think for the most part, if and again, guys, if you haven't gotten the book, you'll see the link down below. Make sure you grab one. I'm seriously, after that, just after you sharing that, definitely grabbing the book. I mean, it just makes sense to it. And there's a whole bunch of these kinds of hacks in the book, or?
Oh yeah, the whole thing's built around that. Yeah, I make the case very early on in the book that that whatever your solution, if it doesn't work over time, it doesn't actually work. So in order to make it work over time, you have to make it work when there's no time, and that's the trick. It's truth. Truth.
I laugh because it is true.
No, listen, I've been doing this my entire life, and I've lived a long ass time, long time. Okay.
Yeah.
And I've seen everything come and go. I've seen, I've been through several decades of quote unquote fitness, and I can tell you that this is all about, everything I've done is just to find what really works over time. And over time, you're going to have seasons where you'll have seasons where you do have time, and you get in shape, and you should, and that's fantastic. And then you're going to have seasons where, you just had a kid, or, you got in a car accident, or you changed jobs, or something. And those seasons when you have no time, you have to make things work without time, because during those seasons where you have no time, time's still marching on, and you're still aging.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the aging gets done. And what you see a lot of, especially as people get older, is that you'll get like these days where a day goes by and you lose 0.5% of something, and you never get it back, ever. It's gone. And then, a 6-month period goes by and you lost 1% or 2% of something. Yeah. And it's gone. You're never going to get it back. And so the trick over time is keeping the momentum going without time-intensive strategies. But that's why I call it hacking. The essence of hacking is getting the same results without time. That's what hacks are. And it's essential. And that's why hacking's caught on so much, because the constraints of time in the real life ecosystem, everybody's getting hip to it. Everybody's waking up. So
who in that community, like one of the names that comes when somebody says biohacks or hacks and things like that, one of the first guys that comes to my mind is Dave from Bulletproof.
Yeah.
The amount of studies and stuff that he's done on himself, along with some of the things. I not as often as I used to. I used to live by it religiously, the executive bulletproof coffee mixture. And then I had I did a blood test and found out my triglycerides were a little high. I was like, maybe I should slow that down. Going back to balance. Who are the besides you, obviously, where can people learn this stuff? I mean, it's obviously important to know what to put in your body. We're like, there's a couple of things you mentioned, like HIF1. The hell is that? How do people learn about this stuff? Where are they going to learn that there's a need for this, or there's, what should they do besides get the book? That's obvious. Yeah. Well, besides get the book, where else can people learn this stuff? I mean, they need to know it.
Not really. The stuff that's in my book is sort of a very new paradigm. Like, you don't really find it elsewhere. And that's why it seems to be getting like a lot of like buzz and people going, I never heard this before. It's because it's not anywhere else. Really, that's the stuff about, HIF1 and all the stuff that's in there. It's very, very different. But there's a lot of really good guys out there, good biohackers that are really devoted and, really students of the game. And, you just got to kind of hunt around. And, Ben Greenfield is an awesome dude. I love him.
Ben, yeah. That's good.
Really great guy. And he's, he's full bore into it and just, experimenting away on himself. And
I got to
think that's kind of the essence
too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of the essence of biohacking, is that you're really you're really a science experiment of one, and then as things start to work, you share them, and then as they work on 2 and 3 and 4, you just kind of keep going. That's what happened to me. Was I did the fitness shtick for 30 plus years, and at the end of that, my net return on investment was 0. I was fat. And because it didn't work in the ecosystem that most people live in. So I really started like looking at how to hack that ecosystem and hack aging and immunity and all those things. And, like originally everything started with a science experiment of one, and it worked. And then I started sharing things, and that worked. And then we did these corporate wellness engagements, and it worked for thousands of people. And it just kind of started spiraling,
There's a trend here. There's something happening here. It's not just me.
Yeah, no, it's very true.
So as an example, like when you get into these corporate wellness deals, I mean, obviously this has been over 30 plus years that you've done that, but like, what are the kinds of results that you see? I mean, besides people just not being fat anymore? I mean, like, what have you seen? What kind of stories have you facilitated? I mean, literally.
Yeah, some really amazing stories that, I really kind of just am in awe of, because I have to confess, I didn't understand quote unquote weight loss as a I didn't understand it. Like, to me, I'd come from the world of just, you work out and you get fit. And so I didn't understand like the whole weight loss industry. Like to me, it was just like, why don't you just work out? I don't really get it. But then I didn't get it. I really didn't. But what started to happen was, like, we would do these wellness engagements, like with the city of Phoenix, and we'd have 2,000 people in the room. And I would see, like, cops and sanitation workers and parks and recreation, and, people that worked real jobs, and, just their whole day was, 8-10 hours and getting home exhausted. And they weren't fit for a living. And like, basically they couldn't work out.
Right.
And I started to understand, there's a difference. There's a difference between what we call fitness and biohacking and weight loss. And it's for a very good reason. A lot of people, for various reasons, have a hard time working out, very hard time. And so food and diet has to do the trick. And so I started to see people like one comes to mind, a woman in her 60s. And we did a follow-up engagement with the city of Phoenix about a year or two after an implement. And this woman comes up and she goes, "I just want to thank you for saving my life." And I was like,
excuse me, I did what?
Well, yeah, exactly. Because again, for me, I was really like, I can't claim like some, Machiavellian brilliance of planning everything out. It was 100%, rumbling, stumbling, bumbling, mostly bumbling. A lot of bumbling.
That's how we all learn, though. That's nothing unusual about that. It's just a matter of how far do we have to bumble before we finally figure it out.
Yeah, and she comes up to me, and I was like, I was kind of in awe. I didn't know what to say, and she showed me a picture, and she'd lost 50 pounds at 64.
Wow.
And her doctor had said, you better get your affairs in order. You don't have one. And so it was the whole thing of like just seeing like what was possible without working out, but just through food and diet, that people could radically change their lives. That I've seen a lot of that. It's very, very powerful. And not just that, we did an engagement with a hospital. We had a bunch of medical professionals get on our program, and I was naive. Again, all the way for me, it's been bumbling and stumbling. So I was under this impression, well, if you're in the medical field, you must be really fit. And we go to this hospital in Pennsylvania, and everybody's overweight. Yeah. And I was like, and I began to work with them and see that, well, no, it's because these people are working 20-hour shifts, sometimes 3 days at a stretch. Yeah. Super high stress. Yeah. When they get done, all they want to do is sleep, like for days. Yeah. And we started seeing things like physiologists and nurses and doctors, like really kind of, we had one physiologist who she had struggled, she lost 100 pounds. And she'd been struggling with her weight her entire life, and it was cravings. And she came up afterwards, and it was what I told you earlier, that the cravings were completely gone. She would get nauseated when she ate sugar, which is a whole bacteria thing going on. Yeah. And just, seeing these stories, like, it's pretty darn amazing, seeing that. And I always like to stress that there's no one size fits all solution. Nothing works for everybody. And
Thank you. Thank you.
For everybody.
There's been so many a lot of the stuff that goes out online, a lot of the advertisements, everybody keeps saying it's a one size. Here's the latest and greatest. Buy.
Yeah.
And it's in my world, in the marketing world, it's, hey, I can help you get leads. Buy my shit. They're essentially doing the same thing to people without even knowing what their actual situation is, how much time they have, what their diet is actually about.
Yeah.
They're just, well, you can eat pizza. Maybe.
Yep.
Maybe. But that's
Yep.
not necessarily true for everybody. So you really shouldn't be saying that.
No, the body is so mind-boggling complex. The body is like,
Yep.
you know, I've spent decades looking at it, and I get this a lot from people like, are you a scientist? How do you know this? Are you a doctor? You know, and it's just your 50,000 hours. That's the answer. But
Nothing beats experience, brother. That's the truth.
every day I run into stuff I didn't know.
Yeah.
Every day, you know,
Well, you know,
and like, yeah.
Yeah, some of the things, like every once in a while, I'll get into some of the research studies, the research papers, and you know, although most of it's Greek, the briefs about them and tell me about what was found out, what they find out about certain diseases, what they find out about certain studies, and all this kind of stuff. Nobody's got time to read all that shit, and I can't do that all the time. But the experience of knowing what works in my own body and the experience of watching what it does to other people, it's pretty damn clear what works and what doesn't. And again, way too often, like you said, it's not a one size fits all. It's just not real. You know, we're not carbon copies of each other.
No, and you bring up something really, really important, which is the concept of real authority. So there's three kinds of authority. Okay, one kind of authority is credentialized authority. So like we see credentials and we're like, oh wow, that's the authority, right? And then another kind of authority is subject matter authority. Like you just know the material better than anybody else.
Sure.
You know, that's a kind of authority.
Mm-hmm.
But the next kind of authority is experiential, meaning you actually have experienced something for yourself and you know that it's true. And that is the highest form of authority. Like if you have, because no one can argue that. Like if, you know, I come out and I say, you know, like apple skins work for everybody and anybody's ever lived, and you go and you're like, well, it didn't work for me. And I'm like, well, I'm the authority, it should work. But actually, no, in your experience, you're the highest authority for that.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I'm feeling motivated to say this right now, but I am. If you're listening, you know, we've entered an era of tribalism where people do not think, they just take their info from authorities. And really what it is it's a form of paternalism.
Yep.
Where we have if you've come from anybody who ever grew up in a dysfunctional family knows that you get this reality inversion shoved on you of like, you know, no, here's reality. Uncle Joe's not really sneaking into Sissy's room at night. Okay. How dare you? Shame on you. Okay.
Yeah.
But really thinking for yourself and trying things for yourself and learning and expanding and experiencing things for yourself is a form of authority. And I would argue it's the highest form of authority. Because
I think in health, it's the kind of authority that's most necessary. Mm-hmm. Even with all of the stuff that's going around with the epidemic, pandemic, whatever you want to call it. You know, when you're dealing with viruses and things of that nature, there's credibility that has to be lent to those who are doing the experiential part of it. You know, the doctors that are out there treating it, the doctors that are out there dealing with it on a daily or weekly, and then maybe some given over to those who are credentialed, depending on their experience. This is now this goes to my own opinion. This is not the opinion of, it's just mine, and $5 gets you a Starbucks. Okay. But the guys that are actually dealing with it on a daily, guys or gals, the people that are dealing with it on the daily, and this goes back to anything experiential. I don't care what it is, building a car to your own health. The people that are actually putting their hands to the work and seeing the results for themselves are the ones that we should be talking to and finding out what their experience is. And then going back to, like you said, becoming that experiment of one. When it comes to our health, nobody knows us. Hell, in a lot of cases, we don't know us because we haven't played around enough to know what our body's going to do. Those of us that have been in health and fitness, we've tested all kinds of shit on ourselves. In fact, we're probably human biology experiments in some cases, depending on how much stuff we put through our systems. Right. Most people never go through that.
Right.
If you don't take the time to at least, you know, test, and that not recklessly. Please don't just take the first damn thing that you find online and start throwing it in your body. Bad idea. Find out what you got to find out from your doctor. Get your blood tested. All that kind of stuff. Do all the tests before you start screwing around with yourself. On the things like what you're discussing, these are things that are just simple nutrition. That's stuff you can start experimenting with today. I mean, sugar-free Jell-O. The hell's that going to do to hurt you? Honestly, unless you've got some real weird allergic reaction to gelatin, which I don't know a single human, I've never heard of that one before, but it's possible.
Well, I always suggest with anything that what you see a lot of is people will hear about some protocol and they'll try it and they'll get some adverse reaction. Well, it didn't work for me, but it's kind of like the way to understand it is like food is a workout for the body. It takes tremendous resources.
I was going to say, was it a real adverse reaction though? Or was it just your body going, hey, this is new. We need some time to adjust to this.
Yeah. The analogy is it's very similar to like if you were a power lifter and then you changed up in one day to a marathon runner, you wouldn't do so. You wouldn't really do good. Okay. You wouldn't even really do good.
Nor would you look good doing it.
Yeah. Even reducing it to just running a mile wouldn't be so great, or even just running around the block wouldn't be good. But you could take a walk around the block. And so if you baby step into anything, you're going to get a very different experience. And so like whenever you try anything new, just try a very, very small amount. Like if it's some new food, like I have this thing in the book of like, hey, try green beans, but try them raw. It doesn't work for everybody. Some people just don't handle it well. And so just try half a green bean and see how you do. Like start small, incrementalize, and then if you're okay, kind of work your way up.
I think most people miss the fact that it's a baby step effect, no matter how much you do it. Or it's a baby step process with a potential mass effect that could happen in your own body. Because when your body realizes, oh shit, I'm being fed the right thing for once, it's going to react. No matter what you do to it, whether it's like, the chiropractors talk about this, you realign your back and all of a sudden new pains pop up. Well, because the nerve was blocked. Duh. You start feeding yourself the right foods and all of a sudden your gut goes wild. I feel like shit. I feel nauseous. Well, because you're feeding it the right kind of stuff and it's changing out. You've got to give it time to settle properly so you can get to the right kind of balance, or your results will show up.
Yep.
No matter how you look at it. So what would be a real good suggestion as far as taking baby steps like this? What would be a good piece of advice to somebody who's listening to this and going, okay, so I should probably try something. What should they start with? How would you suggest they begin taking a look at the picture?
I give this protocol in my book that talks about starting with some amino acids in the gut. You have a lot of people who have inflamed gut issues. And,
a ton.
So hopefully you're working with a practitioner. But what a lot of practitioners are familiar with using glutamine in the gut, but not so much familiar with the other aminos. So you can look at using a combination of aminos, so glycine, arginine, tryptophan, 309, valine, and glutamine together. And you can do those at night, and it can have a very powerful sort of healing effect on the gut, if you're starting there. And what I would suggest is just, take those to your practitioner and go, hey, can we try this? And then along with that, the protocol I give in the book is apple skins, red phenols, and HMO powder, which is just baby formula. You can get it at Walmart, like $15. Now a lot of people kind of look at the baby formula and go, I don't want all this other junk, but that's what I use. It works fantastic. And get on that and try it in the mornings, maybe again at lunch for 10, 15 days. And what most people will report is they feel pretty amazing, pretty incredible. It's a very powerful protocol in the gut. So start there, because
red phenols. Let's dig on what are those?
Just red powders from things like raspberries and pomegranates and powderized versions of those. It's okay. Yeah, it's just an easy way to get a ton of phenols without having to eat like 55 pounds of fruit.
Considering. Yeah.
So that's an easy start. And what you'll find is that as the gut function starts to kind of optimize, what it's doing is taking the slope. So the slope of difficulties here, and then what it's doing is moving it to here. So it's just making everything easier.
Okay.
And then from there, that's an easy start for most people.
I would like to know what brands you don't have to say it here on the but after this I'd like to know what brands you would suggest are probably the healthiest And then if somebody that's listening or watching wants to know, send me a message. I'll be happy to share with you what he shares with me. For the desire of not trying to promote a particular product, I want to know what you do, because I actually have a broad spectrum amino that I only take after workouts. I didn't realize that this could probably be a good idea for me right before bed, along with an HMO and the phenols, or whatever. My mom, who's 81, has been struggling as well to lose weight. And I'm thinking maybe if I give that to her before bed, that her mornings will be easier for her to wake. Because like right now she sleeps a lot. And half of that is, I think half of that is just the fact of boredom, because there's not a lot to do right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that she doesn't need to, take care of her gut. And she does get that stuff. She understands how that works. At 81, she's still got good faculty, and she knows that she needs to eat right. But that's something that would probably, in my mind, that could help her a lot.
Yeah, a lot. What you find with older people, particularly with this COVID thing, is that the immune system is kind of hyperactivated from age in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So you find that they're in this state of constant oxidative stress, what's called Synalytic stress, and sort of there's a thing called the inflammasome, which refers to the spectrum of things that inflame the body. So everything's just hyperactivated, and so they're just very depleted in resources that healthy people are walking around with no problem, that easily fight off things, and a lot of it has to do with antioxidant status. So getting the gut kind of lined up a little bit more at that age will affect the entire body dramatically. And then the other thing is body fat. So body fat plays, we didn't really get into that here, but
we can get into it another time. You're coming back. We need to talk more. That there's a lot to discuss, because that's one of her biggest challenges is her weight. She has gained a lot of weight. Part of it is a lack of activity. The other part is, we're kind of limited on what we eat. And when I say limited, it's only because I'm the only one that goes out shopping. I'm the youngest in the family. I get to take care of mom. So,
good for you, man.
Yeah.
Good
So I'm trying to find the best way to maximize what we have, and keep her healthy. At the same time, I have an 18-year-old son. I was a single dad for the last, 6-7 years. So I've got two sides of the spectrum. I've got 81 and 18. I just realized what that is. Flip.
You know what? You're a real man. You're taking care of your family. That's a real man.
I appreciate that. The idea of wanting to see her live her golden years as golden versus, the alternative. I think this is for anybody, and not just my mom, but I mean, if there's a way to help slow that process of decay, because
dramatically.
It would. It's worth it to me.
Oh gosh, dramatically. Yeah.
So, all right. So they get the book. They start the protocols. I'm definitely starting. I'm going to try myself too, because Lord knows I've gained a bit of weight myself. What other things can you suggest that might be a good? I mean, what indicators are there? What other indicators can somebody pay attention to that might actually tell them there's something up?
Well, really, energy aches, and your sleep are kind of like what you want to look at. And really, they're all one thing. It's all one thing. We just think of them as separate things, but it's really all one thing. So what happens as we get older is your blood gets less viscous. It doesn't flow as well. When it doesn't flow as well, it doesn't reach all the places it needs to reach. And those places start compensating through all these different inflammatory processes. And when that happens, energy production begins to die off. And so there's this sort of like snowball effect that happens. There's even a name for it. It's called the Secretory associated, it's called the Synalytic Secretory associated phenotype. And it has to do with just everything is getting inflamed in the body. So, really number one is correct sleep, because what happens during sleep is most of us have issues with airway flow. As we age, the cheeks start to collapse, the jaw starts to collapse, the inner airway starts to collapse. All this starts to collapse. And when that happens, you're taking in less airway. And that's like throwing kerosene on the fire of aging. So you got to correct that. And the easiest way to do it is just get some breathe rights. You know, get your nasal flow.
I
your
do
intake of
those
air
every
going.
night.
Yeah.
I live with
And then
those things.
I have in my book. It's called the Seattle Protocol. And then the next thing is you want to get some mouth tape here. So you're not breathing through the mouth and you're breathing through the nose. You're going to oxygenate the brain about 20% better. So that's going to protect against cognitive decline.
So you're going to love this.
Right.
I just had Molly McLaughlin here on the podcast last week. Molly McLaughlin's company is called Sleep is a Skill.
It is.
You are reiterating just almost verbatim what she was saying on that podcast with regards to taping the mouth, keeping the nostrils open so you feed your brain. All that stuff matters. So if you guys haven't heard,
so easy. It's such an easy correction.
You know, you would, but most people never. It's funny. I discovered breathe rights probably back in 2014, 2015, I think, is when I first discovered those. When I use them, I dream. When I don't use them, I don't. Hello. It's kind of a telltale shot right there.
Yep.
If you're getting oxygen to the brain is able to function and it dreams.
Yes. And loss of REM sleep, loss of dream sleep is the most powerful effector of loss of sleep, restoration during sleep. So REM sleep is critical.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't, it's the ability that gives the brain the ability to send out the signals to the rest of the body that, hey, I get it. There's inflammation here. Let's fix it. Rather than sitting there going, I need oxygen so I can even function. Yeah.
Oxygen. So lack of oxygen. I don't think I'll get into this here because it's too complex and we're a little long in the show in terms of like everybody's brains, you know, keeping up with this. But
we got a few minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a protein called hypoxia-inducible factor 1, and the way to understand it is that your body has all these backup mechanisms. You need two things to be alive. You need food and you need air. Okay, food, water, air. Okay.
Yep.
And when you don't get food in the body, you need energy and air. That's what you need.
Yep.
You don't get food, your body has all these backup mechanisms to make energy. Okay, so it's got a go-to system. But when it comes to oxygen, when you don't get oxygen,
there's no go-to system.
There is. It's called HIF1. And what HIF1 does is it essentially, when there's not enough oxygen, it basically allows the body to adapt to oxygen deprivation. The problem is normally what happens with this protein is that it gets dissipated. It's in the cytosol and it gets what's called ubiquinated. It means it just gets broken up and dissipated and used for spare parts. But when you have sustained oxygen deprivation, like sleep apnea, during sleep not getting enough oxygen, what happens is you get a condition called pseudohypoxia, where HIF1 will stabilize. Yeah. And when it stabilizes, it's really, really bad because it becomes a gene activator. It'll translocate into the nucleus and activates all these genes that are all associated with cancer. So sleep apnea and lack of oxygen during sleep, like 1-to-1 correlates to cancer onset. So fixing that is like a really big deal.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of interesting because my I might explain what happened to my dad. My father passed away of cancer in 2000, and he had sleep apnea. And what you just said, just kind of like, you know what, he snored really bad for years, and did not get a lot of sleep. And he worked he was a truck driver. He'd be up at 3:30 in the morning. He'd get home at about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. He would eat a massive meal and go right to bed and snore. Wow. Yeah. And after, when they finally found out that he had cancer, he had to change like a lot. He even had to go out on walks and try to get some kind of exercise, and his meals had to change. My mom took him to Mexico for the natural treatments that they do over there, because they wouldn't do it here. And just tried everything. But he had the CPAP machine and all that stuff. It was hard for him because it's like, how do you sleep with something like that on your face at night? Your body's never had that before. Of course, breathe right strips weren't around either yet. At least not in the ready form they are now. It was rough watching him go through that. And to know that if there were breathe right strips, he might still be alive today. So
Yeah.
if you know, oxygen isn't really super necessary. I mean, I know our air is not comprised of more than what 20% of it, but shit, you need it.
Yeah, so here's a whammy you see a lot today is, and this really hasn't been talked about. And, you know, it doesn't matter what side of this issue that you're on, you just need to understand mechanistically how things actually work. Because if you're going down this road pursuing your health, which I assume everybody is, and you're not traveling down a road based on how things actually work, you're chasing illusions, you're going to be dissatisfied.
Oh, often.
Disillusioned horribly. So, most people have some form of uncorrected oxygen deprivation or sleep apnea during sleep. Most people, it's very common. And now when you add to that, you're wearing masks like 8, 9, 10 hours a day. What you're doing is you're replicating sleep apnea.
Yeah.
You're replicating oxygen deprivation during the day.
Yeah.
So now it's not to say that masks are bad. There's actually benefits to wearing masks, like short-term mask wearing is actually highly beneficial. Like it's very similar to oxygen deprivation training when you're in the gym. You know?
Yeah.
Like HIF1 is neither good nor bad. It's both. And so production of HIF1, it can be good. Like there's actually some benefits, like short term, you going to the grocery store, you're wearing a mask. There's actually probably some benefits to that. This is the extended long-term deprivation of oxygen that you need to really think about. And so, you know, if you're in that position where you're not getting oxygen inadequately, you know, most of the day, sleep, and then during the day, you need to think about that, and you need to just take steps to correct that. So make sure that you're, you know, routinely oxygenating.
I think it keeps going back to balance. And again, it's like so often the health and fitness, or health and wellness even, vertical has gone out to demonize one thing or another. You know, when you look at this fat's bad, this fat's not bad anymore. This fat's not this the LDL, HDL. And you look at it and you're like, there was a point in time where honestly I shut all of it off. I mean, I'm like, y'all are full of shit. I don't care what you say. You can stop now. I'm just gonna go research my own stuff.
Yeah, I had a chapter in my book that really spoke to this, and really what I called it baby talk. And it's the idea that a thing is good or a thing is bad. So, and that's 100%, 100% of the marketplace today is this polarized kind of view of anything. So it's antioxidants are good, free radicals are bad.
Right.
You know, plants are good, meat is bad, plants are good, blueberries are good, milk is bad.
Yeah.
You know, coconut oil is good. And the reality is that, and this is how things actually work, is that everything can be either good or bad. It just depends on the context and the timing and the situation. So everything, like free radicals and antioxidants, I spent a chapter on this. Free radicals can be really good, and antioxidants can be really bad. It depends.
Yeah.
So there's no black and white to anything when it comes to the body.
I think that's, again, because of how easy it is to portray one or the other in any platform, a media platform. Written, video, audio, doesn't matter. It's not hard to sway a general populace because most of them don't have time to go do this research.
No, we love to be polarized. We love we love to kind of pick a topic, and
humans love drama. Let's put it that way.
We love drama.
It's really sad. And I'm being absolutely frank here. It's really sad to see how much humans love drama, because they're looking for a hill to conquer. Right. It's like, guys, this isn't a fucking that you need to conquer. That's not what this is about. Right. This is about living a life. This is about living in an adventure and understanding your body. You're gonna have hills. You're gonna have valleys. It is, and I know people hate this one. It is what it is. The amount of balance that you put into it is what's important. You know, from one day to the next, if you take a pendulum and you swing it back and forth, something's going to get cut eventually. And you really don't want to know what that rope is tied to. It's called your health.
Yes. And that's, you know, really all we're after is how things actually work. That's all we're really after here.
Yeah.
You know? And so in the pursuit of how things actually work, we have to really like depolarize our minds from, you know, what we think, because if you just give things enough time, almost always things work differently than the way we thought they did. And, you know, a really good example I leave in the book about this is the mitochondria.
Yeah.
We've heard for years about how the mitochondria are like the be all end all source of, life, and, like all you gotta do is fix the mitochondria and, get them to procreate and you're gonna live longer and all that.
Wonderful.
And that's not really how it works.
Nope.
It's not how it works. I mean, it is, but it's not. And I give the case that there's these other organelles within our cells called the peroxisomes, and really the emerging view that's probably most correct is that they are co-equals and co-organs with the mitochondria, and they both work like pedals on a bike. Like, is one pedal more important than the other? No, they kind of need both.
Yeah.
And that the best way to get the things that we're seeking may not be trying to tweak the mitochondria, because you can do more harm than good, but instead going after tweaking peroxisomes and clearing peroxisomes out. And that might be the best way, because what you do to the one affects the other. So, it doesn't work the way we thought it did. And the way things actually work seems to be very different. And that you'll find that's true just generally across the board.
You know what's interesting? You there's a word that you used, might.
Yeah.
And it speaks of, I've heard this before. If you look at some of the translations of ancient texts into Greek, and how today we are so, I hate to say we're absolutionists, but we want an answer. Right. We want an answer, and we want that answer to stick 100%, or I don't want to hear it. And it's like, I don't think you get it. There's no absolute when it comes to your body and your health. There's what may work, and it may work for a time, but note that your body is going to change. And as it changes, what might have worked previously may no longer work in the future. It's interesting, and the reason I mentioned Greek is because when you do certain translations from any language into Greek, Greeks had a tendency to be approximates. They spoke in approximations. There was never anything that was directly on this particular day, at this particular hour, this is what was said, and this is how it went. It was like, well, in and around this time, this is kind of how it went. And it drives people nuts today because we have so much information available to us that we can sit there and go, there, that's the answer. And yet at the same time, somebody on the other side starts looking like George Carlin going, oh, he's full of shit. We cannot be that. There's just no room for being an absolutist when it comes to your health.
I could not agree with you more. I would have said the same thing myself. You really just hit it with a hammer there. It is, something I talk about is that we have to, language conditions how you think. Yeah. And so the words that we choose to use very much decide our minds for us. And just by picking different words, we can really open our minds up. So it's very important that, and I think what you said is really fascinating, in that an entire culture can, just by virtue of the language itself, sort of think a certain way, but it's only because the language itself limits the way that they think. Yeah. And for example, the example is Eskimos and snow, words for snow. We've got one word, snow, snow is snow. No, it's not. There's 18 or 20 or however many words there are for snow.
Yep.
And when it comes to the body, really, like, the best way to look at it is, I like to use this phraseology, which is the emerging view seems to suggest. Yeah. Meaning, like, this is what it seems to suggest, and it could get revised. Not 100% sure, and sort of this definitiveness. In fact, the thing that, if you're listening to this, the thing that's I think is really important to understand is that I spend a lot of time reading science papers, a lot, and there's this debate that's been bubbling up for a few years now about the lexicon of the framework that currently exists to describe what we're seeing in the body, and that it doesn't. We need a new framework because what we're seeing doesn't fit the way we thought things worked. And the way we thought things worked was reductionism, that you could just reduce things down to causal sort of like agents and go, oh, well, see, this one thing is the reason for everything else. And if you just take this one thing and then follow it down the daisy chain, you'll get the answer. But there's a paper.
I'm so glad I never read those, because I can tell you right now I would have disagreed with it. There's just too much in life that suggests otherwise. Don't get me wrong, science has its place and its purpose, and I agree with what they do. But when you get to that absolutist kind of position, you're gonna forget something that also contributed to it. I just don't see it. So you said a new study just came out that said what?
Well, there's a paper in the Atlantic published a few years ago now, probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it was some scientists talking about this problem that we need a new language to describe the reality of what we're seeing in the body. And basically, to sum it up, they said that we used to think that things were reductionistic, but the emerging view is that things seem to be operating according to a top-down master map that controls everything all at once. And they encapsulated it by trying to describe the interaction of a particular neuron, and it looked like a horror map, like a spaghetti map. And basically, the scientist at the end of it just said, everything does everything to everything. That's how it works.
That's
and that's the truth. Like everything.
And I was going to say that is probably the best way to describe humankind. Think about it. I mean, it's not one thing. We all have, look at humankind as how much we affect each other. There's no one factor. I mean, everybody wants to say, well, it's this reason or it's that reason. It's like, no, it's every reason. And yeah, you can attribute certain factors to certain outcomes. But if you're going to say it's just that one factor, you've missed a whole bunch of other shit that probably happened as well. Why did this person get cancer this way? And they lived a clean life and they lived healthy. And the guy that ran marathons at the age of 42 drops of a heart attack. The hell's that about? And versus the guy who lives to 95, smoking cigars and drinking coffee every day of his life. The hell is that about? How's that possible?
Too much exercise, you don't live as long.
So you don't exercise? I here's a story. And for the life of me, I only remember this because I had heard years ago that a doctor said, if you really want to live a good life, get sleep, drink water, and take a walk every day. And I thought about it, a gentleman that I knew of. I didn't know him personally, but he used to be a landscaper at a hotel. Sweet old Filipino man. Not that his ethnicity has anything to do with it, but he would ride to work on his bike from Lahaina. I'm from Maui, so from Lahaina all the way out to Kapalua. Well, that's a long ass ride, but he would ride to work every day and he would ride home every day. Now, to work is uphill. From work is obviously down. This old man was probably one of the nicest people you ever met. Strong, out there doing landscaping work, just smiles, real cool guy. One day, and I had learned about, he rides to work every day. I'm like, guy doesn't have a car? It's like, no, he bikes here. I'm like, what the hell? Very mellow person. One day, not there. I asked, I said, hey, where is he? And they said, oh, you didn't hear? I said, no. It says, he passed away. I'm like, wow, that sucks. He was such a nice guy. How old was he? 93. What? And he had been riding to work every day until the age of 93. And I'm like, please tell me it was natural causes. They says, yeah, apparently he just didn't wake up. I'm like, okay, good. I'm cool with that. He didn't die of a heart attack or some weird shit that would have been just like, there's no way. Come on. But he did what the doctor said. I mean, obviously he ate whatever food he was eating, but he took his exercise. He got his sleep. The man was well past retirement age. He was still working. But that again, that speaks to, that's one kind of human. What were the absolute factors? They're not going to be the same for me. I don't have the same kind of time that he does or did. I don't have the same kind of diet he did. I can guarantee you that, he probably liked other foods than I did too. He probably has no idea what HIF1 is or phenols or anything like that. And yet, look how long he lived. Yeah. So it's like, we can't be, I like the whole, I like it. It's a spaghetti bowl. I agree. I think the big thing is figuring out in that spaghetti bowl, what's the tastiest spaghetti and do you like some Parmesan on it?
It's fantastic.
I'm not lying. I'm just, do you like Parmesan?
Yeah. There's something I think about from time to time is something that's been lost is there was a form of discourse that people used to engage in when we didn't have email and the internet and social media, where we could just, get social reward points for slamming other people. There was a way.
You mean the science community?
No, just the whole thing of like, like you can get outrage points, you can get attention points for, picking your stump and your hill
Whatever. Yeah, right.
But there was a way that people used to communicate via letters where, when you go look at some of these great thinkers, they would write letters to each other over a number of years on different topics. And it wasn't vitriolic exchanges. It was just, you have people with opposing viewpoints that would write these very long letters, and the recipient would very carefully consider and reflect upon those things. And, sometimes over a period of 20 years, one party might come to another position. And so, after all this time, I kind of have come, I must state that I have come to agree with your position, erstwhile, Sir Lord, your servant for, you get this, but you would have an exchange of ideas. And, that can be very rewarding and very stimulating, and you can learn a lot. I always maintain the answers are not in what you know, they're in what you don't know. All the answers are in things you don't know. And it keeps us from, swelling our heads up and thinking we have things figured out. But I wish there was more of that.
I don't know what the percentage is to that statement of truth, which is when you don't know, what you don't know, you play the part of the fool most often. I don't know if you ever heard that one. A man that knows he doesn't know as a child, teach him. A man that knows that he knows is wise, learn from him. A man doesn't know what he doesn't know is a fool, shun him. When you have that type of discourse, what you're talking about, which is which is exactly how it ought to be done. You listen, you take them at see. Everything's become so now. We debate this now. And we come to a conclusion now. And it's like, well, hold on a second. It took some people, like you said, it took some 20 years because evidence was not appearing in front of them. It was appearing in front of somebody else. Sometimes it took 2 to 5, 10, 20 years before the other side would go, I hadn't considered that. The medical community is famous for that one. Science community is also famous for that one. I hadn't considered that. I didn't realize that existed. And this paper that came out, 5-7 years ago saying, yeah, it's all a spaghetti bowl. When new evidence appears, how do we find it? How do we know? Unless we have that kind of discourse where somebody goes, well, I saw this. Okay, that's interesting. How did that come about? What were the conditions around it? That makes sense. Okay, so under these circumstances, I wonder what other circumstances this could become a reality.
Yeah, the history of science is the history of being completely wrong while we were absolutely sure we were right. And so,
the biggest discoveries were completely shunned, and shoved out of the science community as heresy. And then later on, when it became real, that it's like they had already died and passed away, and it's like, but didn't they say that was not correct?
Yeah, you hear these assertions, regarding things like settled science and settled. There's nothing settled ever. And really, it's very easy to sort of infantilize your mind and think that like what you're doing is you're really putting yourself, you're being an adult child by just sort of taking in whatever. Okay, well, it must be true because my authority figure said it. But the real truth is that what we know is just this ever-evolving proposition. And I like to use the example of we don't really know if the speed of light is really constant. It probably is, but it might not be. And there's some evidence that it's not constant. Yeah. It's actually a variable. And if it's a variable, then everything we think we knew is wrong. Now, we don't know. We should leave a little percentage in our brains that it says, well, we believe that the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second, and it seems that it's been consistent, but it may not have been. There's still there's a tiny emerging body of evidence. It might not be. We don't know if that's valid, but what we're doing is
we know it bends, and if we know that it bends, what happens to the speed when it bends?
Yeah,
we don't know.
So we know the best that we know up to this point,
Yeah.
but we don't actually know definitively one way or the other.
Yeah.
You know, so everything we think we know is sort of like, we probably know this, but we may not.
Yeah, and that worries me about advanced civilizations because they could just ruin it for all of us. But anyway, it's a good point, though. I mean, I think the bottom line is what you say as far as keeping that little percentage of, hey, you know, there could be some evidence here that we haven't seen yet. You know, we know what we know, and that's great, and we can live according to what we do know. But if we are closed to new evidence, which seems to be happening a lot these days, we miss the experiential factor. We miss the experiential authority of our own selves, of what we know, what we don't know.
That's a great way of putting it. Experiential authority of what we don't know. That's such a great way of putting it.
I mean, we have we have a brain that can think. I just wish more people would. We're at that spot, brother. We've hit the mark, and I got other things I want to talk to you about when it comes to things like fat loss, weight loss, things of all that nature. Can I get you back?
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Okay, yeah, I really do want to talk more. I think this was phenomenal. I thank you for the insights. Definitely, again, after this is done, I want to get some thoughts on what we can get for the beginning on the gut health, because Lord knows I could use it. My sleep's a wreck right now, only because of a lot of what we're doing. If you want to find Joel Green, Joel's going to tell you where.
Yeah. So go to VEEPnutrition.com.
Spell that.
And that's a VEEP, excuse me, V like Victor, E like Edward, E like Edward, P like Paul, VEEP like the TV show.
Okay.
And then the word nutrition. So it's all one word, VEEPnutrition.com. And, or you could just do a search for the immunity code in Google, and we've got an ad at the very top. You can click on that. It'll take you right there. And there's all our goodies there. And yeah, so go there and, you know, get your stuff.
And you're on social?
I am. So I am new to Instagram, but I'm
getting
a little following here. So check me out on Real Joel Green on Instagram.
Sweet. We'll put that link in the description. I've got a bunch of others here for you as well. I believe you're also on LinkedIn, and yep, you're on LinkedIn. You transcend.fit. What's that?
Transcend is the corporate wellness sort of side of things. My partner, Robert Reams of the Dr. Phil Show, and I have just done engagements there for years. And so that's like our corporate wellness stuff. Awesome. Good deal. So if you're in that realm, you're HR or somebody that's looking for a good candidate for a corporate wellness program, please reach out to Joel via transcend.fit. Want to thank you again, brother, for coming in and hanging out with me. Yeah, thank you.
It was quite enlightening, really, with regards to some of this stuff. So that's some new things I can try, and I'm sure anybody that's listening has also picked up at least 5 or 10. Or they've been not paying attention. We'll have them back. I'm not entirely sure when this. If you have questions, make sure that you go ahead and you can post them in the comments down on whether you're subscribing. I keep forgetting this thing's flipped. Subscribing here on YouTube or subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Feel free. You'll find Joel Green around. Just Google his name. He's on other podcasts too, you guys.
I'm young.
And he'll be back on this one. We're going to get into some other stuff real soon. So thank you again, everybody, for watching, for listening. You know how we love to end this. We love every one of you. Make sure you stay up, stay healthy, stay safe, and live your best life possible. From both of us to all of you, it's Java Chat. Ciao for now.
For more information on Java Chat, visit www.javachatpodcast.com. You've been listening to Coffee with Mike on Java Chat. Tune in weekly to this podcast for the next episode. You can also download or subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. A production of Oasis Media Group, LLC. Located in Las Vegas, Nevada. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved.